Hi everybody, welcome back to the Limit Breakdown, where we break down the latest in movies, TV, and everything going on in entertainment. Today we're going to be breaking down the latest installment of the MCU in Thor, Love and Thunder.
Our too long didn't watch review is unfortunately 3 hearts. That means it was okay, it had a lot of potential, but you can wait till it comes out on Disney Plus. Stick around after our intro for our deep dive and review of Thor Love and Thunder.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the Limit Breakdown, and today we're going to be discussing Thor, Love and Thunder. So Sid, let's go ahead and get right into it, man. Start us off.
Disappointment.
Oh boy.
I did not like the movie as much. It was not as entertaining. Very funny. They copied basically what they did in Thor 3, which was Ragnarok, and which was a very funny movie. The director, Taika Waititi, that was his style, which I'm cool with, but I think this movie did not live up to par of that one in multiple aspects. One, I think there were jokes in there that were kind of forced, unlike the previous one, which were kind of like natural, kind of there. Secondly, the plot line for this one had so much potential to be very robust and very serious and, well made, but they dropped the ball a lot of times, and then it felt like the comedy overtook the story sometimes. And with a combination of all those three things, I just didn't think the movie was where it could have been. That was my personal opinion. What about you?
So I enjoyed the movie. I still gave it a 3 out of 5, the same as you did, just because I feel like when I first watched Ragnarok and it was a completely different shift in tone, I thought that was very interesting to take with Thor, because we were so used to him being so brooding and so serious, and it was good to see a more lighter side.
Yeah.
Now with this one, like you said, at times it was a little bit too much. It was a little bit almost goofballish.
Yeah.
But in the same vein, there's also another thought of it. Another thought for me that comes to mind, and it's when you look at a character like Thor, right? And obviously we know that Taika Waititi, the director, is known for a particular style of directing, which is very humor based.
Yes.
And I look at this particular movie, and you look at a character like Thor, who canonically has suffered. Like he's lost his entire family, he's lost his world, his home.
Yeah.
Has had to rebuild. Lost the love of his life or whatever, and so it is not unbelievable for me for someone in that position to turn to humor, even ill-placed humor, as a sort of self-defense mechanism. So I can see him, being a little bit, taking things with a little bit lighter of a tone, at least externally, to a certain degree. The other aspect for me too, as well, for this movie is, I think they wasted Gore. I think they wasted.
Yeah.
He wasn't so much Gore the God Butcher, but more the child kidnapper.
that a lot of things of that didn't make sense.
And they were. I mean, listen. These characters are not the easiest to play, and I'll give Christian Bale all the credit in the world. There were some moments that were very, very powerful at the very beginning, when he comes across the god on the oasis that he'd been praying to, and that just basically laughed in his face, and then he goes on the whole tangent about all gods must die. Like that was delivered very convincingly. Like it sent chills. Like it was a good performance, but there was other times where it was too much. Like when he was talking to the children, he was just being so over the top, and there was a lot of potential, but the tone was just so all over the place for me.
Yeah, I agree. So I want to break it down as as the scenes go and what made it, you know, good or bad. I think from the start, like you said, Gore's ideas were really good. The plot could have been really good. This movie is based off of a Thor miniseries, basically, which was I think like a 6 or 7 part series. I can't remember the exact number, where Thor sees Gore killing gods in like his early Thor days, and like when he's established as Thor, and then later on when he's the king of Asgard.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but the Gore the God Butcher storyline is very different in the comics. There's actually 3 different versions of Thor. When he was younger. It's a very young Thor, it's a present day Thor, and then it's a future Thor.
Yeah. And he meets him throughout, but he doesn't know who he is until later. Right. And it's very interesting, and then that's fine that, you know, MCU takes part of it. But in the comics, Thor is definitely very afraid of Gore and what he can do. This one, he understands the threat, and he's like, okay, well, we'll do this, and this together. But it felt like he's like, well, at the end of the day, I still think we can do this, right? And it was too lighthearted. Like, you understood the heaviness of it, but it too lighthearted, especially when they go to the city of the gods, Omnipotent City, where Zeus, coincidentally, rules over it, per se.
Zeus, by the way, total a-hole.
Yeah. So that also didn't make sense to me. I was like, well, they're afraid of this god, of Gore the God Butcher. You know, even Zeus was like, yeah, I'm afraid because he has this one sword that can kill me, you know. And you see all the other gods, and I'm like, well, at the end of the day, Thor basically whooped him.
Yeah.
Right? Even, yes, Thor is maybe stronger than the other gods, but that part didn't make sense to me.
Well, it wasn't so much that I don't think they were scared. I think that they knew what his ultimate goal was, which was to kill all the gods. They knew that Gore couldn't reach Omnipotent City because he wasn't a god.
Yeah.
And they knew that the other thing that he wanted was to reach infinity through the Bifrost.
Yeah.
The only way he could get that, that's why Zeus was trying to tell Thor to stay. He's like, hey, just stay, relax, take part in the orgy. You're disinvited from the orgy. No, but yeah, he was trying to tell him, like, yeah, if we don't take the bait, there's nothing he can do. Eventually he'll just run out of steam. And I mean, he wasn't wrong.
But he would still be killing gods in the meantime.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't. I mean, I guess it wasn't the top level god, so he didn't care.
I suppose that whole thing. I thought it could have been
that was
better.
part of the point too. That was part of the whole reasoning behind the thought process. Is just that the gods are not these divine beings of benevolence. They're selfish, arrogant a-holes. It's just one of those situations.
Yeah, fair enough. So that part kind of was weird to me. So Jane Foster being Thor, I did like it. Natalie Portman got jacked. So I thought it was awesome. Her storyline.
There was a bit of a controversy about that. I thought it was like people were saying. I mean, I'd heard that she trained for it, but then there were some buttholes on the internet that were pointing out that there were some shots where it showed that she had like the CGI pins on her arms where they can edit that out.
Oh,
so
I did not see that actually. I thought she genuinely got big.
I mean, there were some pictures there where she did look pretty buff.
So I mean, I'd be happy if she did that. What?
Oh, we saw the She-Hulk trailer.
Watch the She-Hulk trailer. Anyways, but I actually did like her as Thor. Her storyline was actually very interesting to me. I thought it was awesome. I think that part of Thor: Love and Thunder was actually really good. How they played her story out, I think was amazing. By the way, I love Darcy on a minor note. Out of all the Thor movies, the one consistent thing that I think is awesome is Darcy.
I kind of wish she would have had a bigger part in this one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is a favorite. I loved her in WandaVision.
This is an intern. He's the intern. But yeah, I think Natalie Portman's Thor was awesome. Now the interaction between her and Thor was weird. I see why they went the direction they went. At first they were just like, oh, we're just friends, whatever.
Yeah.
Him missing her throughout the movie, they become closer and closer and closer. And then that one final scene where they're on the boat and they're flying towards the sunset, whatever, and then they're just like, well, I want to be with you too, and then they just make out.
Yeah.
I think they could have pushed that a little bit further to the end of the movie instead of them immediately liking each other and falling immediately back in love.
I think that Jane and Thor's relationship was one of the few things the movie got right. Because I feel like had they pushed it too much towards the end of the movie, then the ending would have been rushed and it would have felt unearned. At least with this way, they're building you because it wasn't the whole purpose for the flashbacks and all of that was to show you that it wasn't that they didn't like each other anymore, or they didn't care for each other anymore. It was just that
stuff going on.
Yeah, stuff was getting in the way, life was getting in the way, world-ending stuff,
Yeah.
Minor things.
Minor things.
He left the fridge open too many times. Just minor things,
Yeah, which I was surprised they showed that aspect. I mean, it was interesting, but I'm surprised they showed the aspect of them with their actual home life.
Yeah.
Him flying away all the time, her doing her sciencey stuff, which I thought was actually pretty clever. Like, they showed actual home life.
Yeah. And I mean, I thought that, like I said, I thought it was one of the things that was well done because before this movie, I really didn't have too much interest in their particular love story. It was very
only the first movie that was actually good.
Very generic. But by the time we got to the climax of the movie, I was legitimately like, oh no,
Yeah, it was very sad. I will say that the ending for her was very sad, very emotional. That part made sense. And then the funniest thing was this. So I actually found this hilarious. Was the interaction between Thor, Mjolnir, and Stormbreaker. Because when he sees Thor back, he's like, or Mjolnir, he's like, Mjolnir, and then you just see the hammer just like. It's like, oh, we were just talking. Old colleague of mine. I thought that was hilarious. Yeah. Obviously, it just made no absolute sense. Oh, no, but it was that joke in there. I appreciated.
So let's hit on the humor aspect because we both said that the humor kind of took us in and out of the certain moments. Like certain moments that needed levity worked well, but there were other moments where the comedy just shouldn't have been there. Yeah, shouldn't have been there to begin with. But. Yeah, like when she was dying in his arms, and then she whispers something in him about, "Oh, I got the perfect catchphrase now." Like that could have.
I mean, I could see that. Yeah. I think that one was okay.
But yeah, I thought the hammer thing was a little bit, but it was kind of a callback because Korg was giving him a hard time about how like, oh, it seemed like you had a very intimate relationship with your hammer. Yeah. So that was pretty cool. But the hammers, both Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, often acted as a conduit for Thor's emotions. So it made sense. Let's talk about some of the supporting characters for the movie.
Korg, who is played by Taika Waititi. I think I personally am not a fan of Korg in general. I understand that he's a comic relief and, a few humors here and there I'm fine with, quips. Personally not a fan. I know a lot of people are. I think in this movie they overdid it. Yeah. There was a lot of scenes where it was like a serious scene or something like that, and then his quips are just like
his whole monologue about how Korg's replicate was a little.
Okay, so that's one thing I actually like that how his species replicates. I thought that was actually pretty clever. The ones that I didn't like was so at the beginning of the movie when the town first gets attacked by Gore. And they're all in the little town center, and Thor's having his first moment with Stormbreaker, and he's about to say everything, and he's like, "Hey guys, everybody, listen!" And then Korg's like, "Oop," I forgot what he says, but he's like, "Oop," and I'm like, if they had not done that moment, because it's a serious moment, and in a comedy movie, there still needs to be serious moments to show you what's going on, the gravity of the situation. Yeah, and I feel like sometimes Korg's comments were taking away from the seriousness. So they're just like, and it felt like, they were trying to show that Gore is a god butcher. He can kill gods, right? And if it's...
Oh, I'm sorry. That's just...
Odin?
That's just my hammer. He can have
Mjolnir? Oh, it's been so long.
You can have the little one.
But, turn that off.
Fine.
But, yeah, and I think it took away from that. So a lot of time, Korg was just not helpful. Another scene where I think it was a little too much when they're in Omnipotent City, and they're talking about they were like, Zeus was like, who disturbs me or whatever, and Gore was like, oh, it's that guy over there, or things like that. It was just, I was like, a little extra.
That one scene where Korg gets zapped, right? Mm-hmm. And he gets zapped into like a bunch of pieces, and you're like, holy crap, they just killed Korg.
Yeah, which was a very serious scene.
And then they completely ruin it by being like,
I'm still here. My mouth is, and I'm like,
and it's just like, and that was another one of the things with the tone about it, just because like Gore is supposed to be this creature, and while this like just unrelenting, unmerciful god butcher, and they didn't show any of it. They showed you the aftermath, like they showed you the giant creature, and that comic book panel, that recreation of a comic book panel was absolutely
really
gorgeous.
good, really
absolutely
good.
Amazingly shot. They showed at the very early part of the movie when Thor separated from the Guardians, like the reason why they weren't there was they went to go investigate some of the other situations where other gods had been killed. So they told you that he had killed a lot, but you never saw it other than the first one.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just me, but I'm getting a little aggravated by these evil incantations turning people evil. Like, why can't we get somebody that's just evil for the sake of being evil? Like at the end when Gore finally gets to infinity, and then the Necro Sword gets destroyed, and then all of a sudden, I can see clearly now. Yeah. My sword is smashed.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. I don't even think it's that. It's just like when he got to that thing, and Thor was like, "Well, you could just wish your daughter back. Have you thought about that one before?" And it just like a random thought. He's like, oh yeah, I guess I could do that too instead of killing everybody. Why didn't I think of that?
So
like
this is kind of a deep cut reference, but have you ever seen Malibu's Most Wanted?
Very long time ago.
Okay, there's a scene in Malibu's Most Wanted where the main character's dad, who's like a politician, right? He had this commercial that was playing on like local TV or whatever, and so the basis of the commercial is like he goes up to the hood and he's like, you guys should stop trying to kill each other and, try to learn and get, work together. And the guy, the guy from the hood is looking at him like, I never thought of it that way. And that's literally the same vibe that I got over here, because it's like, hey, Gore, like, you could just bring your daughter back to life instead of killing us all. And Gore's like,
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, so that was another thing with the plot that it didn't make sense. I was like, that part didn't correlate. One thing that that I have to mention, which was I think was hilarious, but also a little over the top. The screaming goats.
I love the goats.
The goats were hilarious. I thought it were a great thing, especially from the start.
So you understand that the goats were a punishment.
Yes. Yeah. They were a punishment, but then he turned it into something else, which was, I thought, hilarious. However, I did think at a certain point they did get a little too much. Certain times they could have like brought them down. But it was very funny, which is randomly like it's so good. Alongside that, whenever they showed the goats, now the movie was brought to you by Guns N' Roses. If you didn't notice, they played a bunch of popular Guns N' Roses songs. I love Guns N' Roses, so I think it was a great addition to the movie. But I think every time the goats got brought in, I think they played. I want to say "Sweet Child of Mine." And they did it twice, and I was like, okay, you could dim that back or play a different song, or have the goats not scream, just enter like normal. But that I think was a little too much for me.
I don't know, man. That final scene where the goats came in to kind of help out a little bit was
certain parts.
I was like,
certain parts.
Like, yes.
Give me so much ringtone.
Look, again, it was hit or miss. Overall, man, I feel like I enjoyed the movie. The jokes, the tone was all over the place, but it wasn't like the jokes completely missed. Like I chuckled a good bunch.
Yeah.
I think more than anything, I'm starting to realize a pattern here with Phase 4 of the MCU. Whereas like we are used to getting all of these stories that intricately connect and build upon each other.
Yeah.
And tell this longer overarching narrative.
Yeah.
And started with No Way Home, and it kept going with Multiverse of Madness, and now with this one these are more insularly told stories.
Correct.
Like they're more,
I can see that.
isolated stories. Like yes, they still have some of that world building. They do have some of that interconnection. But this is a Thor story. The Multiverse of Madness was a Doctor Strange story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of taking it back to the early days of the MCU.
There was not really a connectivity.
And I think they're using the TV shows more to build that larger world.
Gotcha. Yeah. But even then, I mean, I understand that makes sense. But even then, I think overall, this movie, if this was a standalone movie you watched, even then, I don't think it lives up to the other ones.
Yeah, and part of it is Marvel's own doing. Like they've built such high expectations. Like, and again, it's they're a victim of their own success because after Endgame, people that's a standard that people were expecting. Yeah. They hit another home run with No Way Home, but that was a lot of nostalgia that was packed into that movie.
Yeah. Even then, I think it was just an overall good movie.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah, you're right. And Multiverse of Madness I thought was a good movie, but it was also one of those like there was so much hype from Avengers Endgame, from No Way Home that
took you away.
That follow up that wasn't the follow up that people were expecting. People were expecting something bigger, even though considering what we got in Multiverse of Madness was still pretty solid. Yeah. And now with this one, it was like, okay, maybe they didn't deliver this last one, but this one right here is gonna be the one. And again, it was a smaller scaled story than what I think people were expecting. I think I played a lot into the disappointment factor of it.
I can see that. I still think overall the movie itself as a standalone was still not as good, especially like we mentioned earlier, as the movie's going on. There was a lot of plot holes, and then at the very end, Gore, when he gets to Infinity, he's like, "Oh yeah, just bring my child back." Things like that. I think it's things that just didn't connect, and they could have done a lot better narratively.
Yeah,
and that's why I gave it the 3 hearts.
Yeah. I think Gore as a villain, although Christian Bale did a great performance, I feel like Gore as a villain is another situation of a wasted MCU villain. Like they still struggle with how basically it's one and done shot villains.
Yeah.
And Gore had the potential to do more, at least should have been more than a one shot.
Yeah, minus his sword. I don't even think he was that. To me, it didn't feel like he was that much of a threat.
How much do you know about the Necro sword?
So I know, I haven't read the comics, but I know about where he comes from. So I do know that one, obviously can kill gods. 2, I think the more you kill, the more it taints your soul, I guess, and takes over, and then you have the desire to do more.
Okay, so I'm gonna lead off into this because I think you don't know about this particular aspect of it. So you notice that with the Necro Sword, when he first got to Asgard, he was able to control almost like shadow-like creatures, right? Yeah. Fun tidbit: all of those creature designs were done by the kids that were filmed. Like the directors told them, hey, if you were to create shadow creatures, what would you do? And so they did the little pictures and they used those designs.
That's actually pretty cool.
For the shadow creatures. So that I thought that was pretty nifty. Yeah. So obviously it hasn't been confirmed or anything like that, but the origin of the Necro Sword is it belonged to Null, the god of the symbiotes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So Null is supposed to have been around at the beginning of time, in the Edge of Darkness, and his whole ambition is to kill all Celestials and all higher powered beings. And so, in an essence, Gore was doing what he wanted. That's why the sword sort of called to him. Like now, like the sword is kind of like the ebony blade. Like the more you use it, the more it corrupts you and stuff like that. But the Necro Sword itself directly links back to Null, the god of the symbiotes. So it's interesting. It's interesting that they introduced the Necro Sword into it. It was destroyed, but it really can't be. Mm-hmm. Like it can reform itself.
Gotcha.
And you
kind of like Mjolnir,
right? Yeah, and I thought that was pretty cool too. Hinting on Mjolnir, because when Hela broke the hammer, she broke the hammer, but not the enchantment.
Yeah.
Although I was a little bit confused because I think they made it seem like Thor cast an enchantment on Mjolnir. Remember when they were doing the flashback scenes? There was a scene where Thor looks at Mjolnir and goes, "You promise me you'll take care of her." And then the hammer glows.
Yeah. So it was, I think he unintentionally kind of did that. Yeah. Because I guess they had built that bond. Mm-hmm. I did like how the hammer she was able to break the hammer apart and send out shrapnel. Cool. That part I thought was very cleverly made. One thing that didn't make sense to me, I know we're getting into the end, but one thing that didn't make sense to me was at the very end where the kids start fighting the shadow creatures, and he's like, "With the power of Thor, you now have the power. You have the power of Thor." My question was, did he always have that power to do that? Or was it something that he had built later on? I'm thinking it mainly happened in Ragnarok when he finally got his full Odin powers. Because if that was the case, why did he not do it when he was fighting Thanos? So
I think it's more the same. I've actually seen that question be tossed around a lot all over the internet. But my particular interpretation of it is that we've seen Thor progress. Mm-hmm. Throughout these, it was one of those, particularly in Infinity War, when he came back after forging Stormbreaker. Yeah. He was singularly focused on killing Thanos.
Yeah.
And he had built this weapon to kill Thanos, and he was gonna be the one to defeat him and take him down, and have vengeance for Loki. So even if he did know about that particular ability, his head was anywhere near the right space to actually think of that.
Yeah, my thinking was also that he didn't get that power until Ragnarok, because that's when he also fully unleashed his...
And then the other aspect of it too was the Asgardians are very much of a warrior culture. So when they were fighting Thanos and his army, it wasn't defenseless children. It wasn't, it was actual warriors. It was warriors and heroes. So he's like, hey, you've trained for this, you prepared to this, you use your skill. Whereas the difference in here, it was a bunch of children, and there were all these shadow creatures that were coming to attack them.
The little girl with the bunny with a laser eye.
Yes,
that was hilarious.
Yes, I love that entire scene with all the kids, all of them.
Good. I even like the scene right after that when Thor and Jane fight Gore, and she's like, "I am the mighty Thor." And I was like, that was pretty good.
Lady Thor is like,
no,
mighty Thor. Yeah. Eat my hammer.
That was pretty funny. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah. So going back to it, I feel like overall I had fun with the movie. I enjoyed the experience of watching it. It was a good, as far as a summer blockbuster, it was good for that aspect of it. When you sit back and you analyze it a little bit, there were some areas where it did leave me wanting. Obviously the tone was all over the place. The comedic element was, I think, a little bit overdone. It would have been fine just to tune it down just a couple notches. it was just a little bit too much at times. But you know, at the same time, I enjoyed Ragnarok, and this was kind of more of the same. Just they turned it up a little bit too much for my taste, and I absolutely loved the ending. One thing we didn't talk about was the reveal when Gore's daughter got brought back, and then they reveal the play on the name is actually a play on the little girl's name because you know Thor is basically raising her as his daughter, so now they're Love and Thunder. So that was really cool. Like I thought it was really cute when they showed Mjolnir and it had like the little faces doll drawn on it.
She drew on it. Yeah, it was hilarious. I did like that scene. I thought that was very clever. Her coming back, him taking care of her because Jane Foster has now died because of Mjolnir not doing the thing. And I thought that part was actually pretty good. I do agree there. That scene, I was good with the ending. Jane dying, did not expect that. I thought she was going to come back some way or something. Not expecting that. I thought it was good. Same thoughts that you had. I think overall the movie was entertaining. The jokes could have been pulled back a little bit, and certain plots could have been made better. Specifically, you could bring your daughter back instead of killing everybody. And you know, the gods being like, I was expecting at least some gods to be like, okay, maybe we can help. One or two gods kind of helping their cause instead of everybody just backing off.
Well, they had an orgy to go to, man.
Yes, I felt that was good.
I mean, it's in line with Zeus. It's very on brand for Zeus.
Yeah. Last point I want to make is the post-credit scene when they bring out Hercules and he's going to be in the next movie.
Yeah, the teaser Hercules.
I don't know if you have seen the TV show Ted Lasso.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes, exactly.
And the guy from Ted Lasso is Hercules. I'm so happy. I love that actor. I like Hercules as a character in the comics as well as Greek mythology. So I think he's going to do a great job. I was actually expecting Hercules to be in the movie.
Yeah.
And helping them, like, oh, and my father was an idiot, and then help them out. But I did like how they brought him out at the end for the next
Although
movie.
I legitimately thought they killed Zeus, so I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, it was kind of... And then I also found it weird that they were just magically able to wield the thunderbolt like a sword. And I'm like...
Well, in Greek mythology, the bolts are made for Zeus, and like you can actually, like, if you're a god, you can grab one. So I guess the other post-credit scene with Jane Foster going to Valhalla.
Oh yeah,
and Heimdall. So in the comics, because her story was like ripped almost panel for panel from the comics.
Yeah.
In the comics, she has the opportunity to go to Valhalla, but instead asked to be sent back down to Earth, and she's sent back down as a Valkyrie.
Yeah, I remember now.
So so I'm wondering if they're going to bring her back in that avenue, and then with the existence of Valhalla, for me it opens up a couple of interesting points. Like, I mean, obviously Odin's there. But Loki should be there too.
Maybe.
Well, he died in battle fighting in defense of Asgard.
Yeah.
Like, he was
possibly.
So I would think
unless he went to Helheim for his crimes.
Well, but I mean, it's from my understanding of Norse mythology, like you can redeem yourself.
Negative, Ghost Rider, because in the Loki TV show he's still alive.
That's a different version of Loki.
That is a different version. You're right. Shoot.
Yeah,
you're right.
It's a different version
he is still alive. Yeah.
So I mean, he's in Valhalla. Yeah. And, like, I would think so. Like, he got his neck stabbed by Thanos. Only thing that was missing in that scene was for Thanos to shake him like a just freshly popped soda. Gruesome.
Yeah. But I think those are all my points.
Yeah. That brings us to the end. Thanks for sticking around with us. Those were our thoughts. Stay tuned for more content coming up. We are going to be doing some more movie reviews, some more TV shows. We still got that Stan Lee pop to give away. We're looking forward to getting to 100 subscribers. So let's keep it going, guys. Appreciate it.
If you like our videos, Please subscribe and hit the like button.